Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I really wanted to talk about the older Samsung Galaxy S10 lineup of phones, and I say older, but they're still pretty new. And those phones are the S10e, S10 Plus, and S10. And I've already made that S10 video, so now we're going to be talking about the Samsung Galaxy S10e and seeing how it holds up in 2020, a full year later. Now, it's been a little bit less than a year, but the S20s are being announced tomorrow, and even though these things didn't come out till like the first week of March or something like that, I figured I might as well talk about them anyway. And I was one of the first, I wasn't the first people, or the first day these things came out, I went and bought the S10, and I shortly after bought the S10e, and then I returned it or sold it, and then I got another S10e, so now I kept this one. And there really hasn't been too much changes or too many changes for the S10 lineup, which I'm really happy about. Nothing too crazy. But with the S20s coming out, there's a lot of rumors being announced, and I'm not really happy about them too much, but I'm not going to talk about them in this video because this is not talking about the S20s, this is talking about the S10e. Now, when the S10e was released, I thought at first, I was like, it's kind of a weirder thing for them to do. Like, I wish they just kind of focused on their two major phones, and then maybe the A lineup could be something else and be more their budget lineup and things, but I'm glad they took this approach. The Samsung Galaxy S10e was a smart thing for them to do, and I hope they continue that with the S20, but I really don't think they are. Now, here's the interesting thing. As I said before, the depreciation for Samsung and even Android phones in general have been really bad. They depreciate much more and much more rapidly than iPhones. But here's the thing with the S10e. When this thing came out, it was selling for like $799 or $699, whatever the price tag was, or $749, I think it was. Now these things on Amazon are selling for about $370. So these things that depreciated quite a bit. However, that's only about like $50 to $40 cheaper or $60 cheaper than a Samsung Galaxy S10 being sold on Amazon. Those are selling for about $430. So these things are still cheaper than the S10s, but I would also probably just end up spending more money for an S10. So if you want to pick up either an S10e or S10 at the prices I just listed, you can check the first links in the description. They'll take you to those Amazon listings. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. We'd really appreciate it. But the S10e, like I said, came out in February of 2019, but it was announced then, but it didn't officially come out until March of 2019. And looking on the front of this thing, we have a 5.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display, and this is 1080p. And for a 1080p display, it's actually really nice, and I think it's pretty much on par to like my iPhone 10 screen, maybe even like my iPhone 11 Pro screen. I don't think there's much of a difference. Even though those ones are a little bit higher resolution and look a little bit better with that True Tone technology, I still think the S10e's display is still very good, and I don't really have too much to hate on it for sure. Maybe if it was 1440p, it would be a little bit better, but I really don't think that really matters in the long run for sure. There's a little bit of bezel around the border of the phone, but I don't think a lot of people care about that anymore. But the display is still pretty good in my opinion. Like, there's really not too much to hate on it, and it's definitely held up quite well. So there's really not too many things to kind of critique it on the display side. On the bottom, you have USB Type-C port as well as a headphone jack, which is awesome. You have both of those capabilities, and as we've seen now in 2020, a lot of phone manufacturers are taking those things out, which is so dumb, but I'm glad they're keeping those things in on these phones. On the back, you can see a glass back, which is really cool, as well as a dual camera setup. And like I've said before, as long as you have a dual camera setup now, you're pretty much set for the future. If you have a single camera setup, even if that camera is very good and like takes great beautiful photos and stuff, it still doesn't keep you on par as maybe something like a triple camera setup will that has a little bit lower quality photos because you have those camera hardware features. But this phone is still set, which I really do like, so you're not going to run into too many problems there. You also have the glass back, like I said, and this phone still feels like a very premium phone. There's nothing really to hate on it. It's just such a safe phone every way around. Maybe the software side is maybe one thing to kind of critique it on, but you have that fingerprint sensor and the power button, which is really nice. And in terms of the build quality, it's awesome. You also have that micro SD card slot, which is really great. And we saw Samsung take a different approach last year, which was really weird. I don't know why they did this. They took out the micro SD card slot for the base model Note 10. I don't know why they did that. It was very dumb. They shouldn't have done that in the beginning with, but I guess it doesn't really matter because they've already done it and there's nothing we can do about it. But we do have that capability of some way on the Samsung Galaxy S10e, where we might not even have it on future Samsung or future Android phones. So who knows? This is just me kind of predicting the future. I've never predicted it correctly before, but I guess we'll see what happens in the future. We also have IP68 dust and water resistance, so you can go up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes. So you have that capability on this phone, and they were never going to take it out. They're still going to keep it in. They might put IP69 dust and water resistance or some higher IP certification, but regardless, we have those huge assets for this phone that a lot of phones might not even have. So the S10e, in terms of the build quality and the exterior, still holds up, and it's still one of the best priced performing phones of the 2019 Sega for sure. Now, hating on the software, I've mentioned this before and I guess I'll mention it again. This thing was released with Android Pie and we were able to get Android 10 on it, and I'm really happy about that. I was able to get One UI 2 on mine, and for some reason Samsung's software center thing is so weird. They need to go and fix it, because on my Samsung Galaxy S8 and my S9, I've always had trouble updating my S8 and S9 to One UI 1, which was so stupid. I had to go through Odin to fix it, and even my S9 Plus has experienced the same issues. So hopefully Samsung can go and fix those issues. It's so obnoxious. But for the S10e, it was a straightforward update. There was really no bells and whistles to go and hop over anything, and I was really happy about that. So we didn't have any huge issues to run into when I updated to One UI 2, which I'm really happy about. And in terms of the software, it's been pretty good. One thing I really like is the new gesture-based design that's actually gesture-based. Before on One UI 1 it was kind of weird, but now it's actually full-on gestures, and that actually limits the amount of burn-in that you might have on your display over time, and that's a humongous thing. Whenever I buy a Samsung phone, it's almost always used, and it always has so much burn-in on it, and it's almost always the nav bar on the bottom. And luckily and hopefully this will actually fix that or limit it. So if you have a One UI 2 device, make sure you enable the nav bar button to be the gesture-based design, so you can eliminate that nav bar button, get some more screen real estate, and potentially have less burn-in on your display over time. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of the software. It's a really good software. At the end of the day, One UI 2 has been great for me. It's more or less the same as One UI 1. There's still a lot of background processes, but it's completely okay for the time being. Now, in terms of the performance, this thing was released with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset, an octa-core CPU, and a Adreno 640 GPU. And there were two different models of the Galaxy S10e, a base model that's 128 gigs with 6 gigabytes of RAM, and the top tier model with 256 gigabytes of storage with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And you can get that base model with that smaller RAM, but it really doesn't matter too much. I still think 6 gigabytes of RAM is good enough, but you have that micro SD card slot, so you can expand that storage as well. And I do have the base model for mine, so I have that 6 gigabyte of RAM option, and my performance has been very good. Like I said, man, I don't really have too many things to complain about. My use case is usually very low. I don't use my phone too crazy. I just test it every once in a while, and I'll be honest, the performance has been very good for the time being. It could probably be better if it had more RAM or if it had anything like some more crazy things with it, but I think it's completely okay. You have a pretty not a low resolution panel, but you have a lower resolution panel with some pretty decent specs inside the phone. So it's not like the phone is being like overpowered by the display or anything. It's nothing like that. The phone itself is still very capable of doing anything you're going to do with it. It's fast enough, and it really hasn't slowed down too much over time, which I'm really happy about. Most Android phones that I use, they slow down quite a bit with the more software updates, and once they start, people start using them, they start slowing down quite a bit. But this has been perfectly fine for me, and I'm really happy about it. So in terms of the performance, I still think it's a thumbs up. I still think it holds up quite well, and I don't think you're going to run into too many problems by using this phone. There might be some weird things here and there, but the performance is definitely not one thing I would worry about. Now, hitting on the cameras, this thing, like I said, has a dual camera setup on the back, a 12 megapixel wide angle lens and a 16 megapixel ultra wide sensor. On the front, a 10 megapixel sensor, pretty much the same thing as the S10. It's a 4K camera. You can do 30 frames per second on that, and that camera quality is actually very good on the front and both on the back as well. That back camera is really great. You can do 4K at 60 frames, 1080p up to 240, and like I said before, really anything you're going to do with this camera is great. I was more so focused on the hardware, necessarily not the software or the quality of the photos, because I knew the quality was going to be great, but I wanted to make sure this phone at least had an extra camera sensor for the future, and this one has it. It has at least an ultra wide sensor, which I'm really happy about. So the camera is great. If you're going to use it, I'm sure you're not going to complain about it at all. So that really pretty much covers it up in terms of the camera. Now, ending it off with the battery life, this thing has a 3100 mAh battery, and it actually has a reverse wireless charging feature as well. And one really cool thing about this battery is that it's only slightly smaller than the Galaxy S10s, but it's actually, in my opinion, I think it has a little bit better battery life than the S10, and that has a lot to do with the display, but also the slightly underperformance that it has compared to the S10. But the S10's battery life is still pretty good, but the S10e has been pretty good for me as well. And for the last year, it's been holding up for the last couple months, but the last year that I've owned it and tested it and all that stuff, it's been holding up quite well. And that really pretty much covers it up in terms of everything I wanted to hit on. And I can definitely tell you, for the last year this phone has been out, it's seen some ups, it's seen some downs for sure, but it's still right now at a good spot that it can continue on. It's still getting another year of software support, which is awesome. It has a micro SD card slot, great build quality, the fingerprint sensor and the power button, which I really do like, great screen, performance is still on par with a lot of phones that are being even released now in 2020. reverse wireless charging, and you have a lot of features that are going to future-proof yourself for sure. It's not like the greatest flagship phone. If you want that, you can go get an S10 or S10 Plus on Amazon for a little bit more, but it's still a very good priced phone, and I'm sure most phone stores are still going to be selling the S10e, even when the S20 and those phones come out tomorrow. But I think regardless, I have a lot of respect for Samsung for pushing out the S10e, and hopefully they keep it going for the next couple versions of phones as well. But I guess we'll see what happens with the S20 tomorrow. But like I said, if you want to pick up an S10e for the price that I listed before, I think it was like $370 or something, I'll leave a link down in the description so you can get it from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section as well. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it would mean so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys would check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.